On the night of November the 21st, 1974, 21 people were killed and 162 were injured when the IRA planted 2 bombs in 2 pubs and left without giving adequate warning. Sadly, those unfortunate people who were injured or died were not the only victims that night.
I come from a very heavy British military family and background, but my older brother, he joined the British Army in 1959 when my father came out of it. My father served 30 years in it, and then when he came out in 59, he came out on the Friday, and my brother joined it on the Monday, joined my father's old regiment, that's gone now, incorporated with so many others, the old 18th Field Regiment, Royal Artillery Regiment. And of course my brother was in the army from then right up until 1988, I think it was, when he came out.
James McDade was a man Paddy knew well growing up in Belfast, but he had no idea that he had joined the ranks of the IRA after his brother Gerard had been shot in the back by the British Army. He learned of his IRA activities in November 1974 after James was killed in a premature explosion while planting a bomb at a telephone exchange in Coventry.
I never knew James was in the IRA until after he died. I knew him in Birmingham. I grew up with him and his family at home. His older brother was one of my best mates. His brother was shot on the doorstep in Belfast, and that's what forced James McDade to join the IRA. We decided to go home for McDade's funeral. I met up with the others on the night of the bombings at Birmingham New Street, about 20 to 8. And the train, we were on the train at 10 to 8. And we left, and we knew nothing about the bombings. We were playing cards on the train, having a great crack. When we got to the boat, we were getting off. You hear all the crap from the Birmingham police about the big dragnet that was going on that night. An absolute load of rubbish. The security, when we got to the Tyson boat, you come through the old iron tin things, you know, with a door, and you come in the door and you're right on the concrete concourse, and the boats are about 20, 30 feet away from you. They had about 6 or 7 little tables like that you used to see in the coffee bars with the wee skinny legs, about 18 inches square. There was a half a dozen or so of them across there, and behind each one there was 2 cops, one in uniform, one in plain clothes. And I went up to this one, and I'm talking to him, and he asked me where it came from. I told him Birmingham. He said to me, "Do you mind coming into the office?" And I said, "Yeah, where is it?" He said, "Behind you." And I turned round, it was a porta cabin like you see in a building site. "Yeah." And he turned round and he says to me, "Do you owe the courts any money?" And I busted out laughing. I says, "No, any money I owed the bastards, I paid them." And he turns round, he started laughing. I said, what are you laughing at?" He says, "Well, if you paid the courts money, you must have some sort of record." And I busted out laughing and I said to him, "Listen, let me tell you something. There's only one thing in Ireland that's green. That's the grass, not the people. I have a criminal record. I lived next door to a police station in King's Standing. So if you want anything, pick up the phone, plug yourself into the Swansea Criminal Records Office. You can have my life story in 2 minutes." And he walked me out of there. He took me through the barrier. And he walked up me to the boat, to the gangplank, and we stood talking there for about 5 minutes. Then he said to me, "Listen, Paddy," he says, "I've got to go. To think I'm nipped off. I'm still working. All the best." And he shook my hand. And I got on the boat. I'm on the boat having a pint. I'm waiting on the others coming, so I'm thinking they're getting the same treatment as me, like, you know, they're being questioned and what have you. I've got no worries. And then the next thing I found out afterwards, them 4 had agreed to go to the police station of their own free will. They agreed, "Yeah, we go down to the police station, not a problem." And as they're getting into the van, Jerry Hunter, the cop's just about to close the door, and Jerry Hunter pushes the door open and he turns around and he says to the cop, "Hey mister, what about our pal Paddy Joe?" And the cop looks at him, he says, "There's another one." And Hunter goes, "Aye, Paddy Joe, he's probably on the pub having a pint." That's how they caught me. So much for his being involved in IRA and being highly trained in counter-interrogation techniques and trying to flee the country. You know, just stupidity, the things that they came out with.
When the police boarded the boat, they found Paddy drinking Guinness at the bar. He was asked to accompany the officers, and after finishing his pint, Paddy complied. Back in the ferry terminal, Paddy was told that his friends Hugh Callaghan, Jerry Hunter, Richard McIlkenny, Billy Power and John Walker were being taken to Morecambe Police Station to make statements about their recent movements. Paddy was asked if he would go too, and he replied that he was happy to do so.
And I got out of the car and walked up the steps into the police station of my own free will. And I sat down, and Fred Willoughby came in behind me and he said something to the desk sergeant. And he said, "Me sit down there, Paddy." And I sat beside the door, and I'm about, 10, 12 feet away from the door. And I sat there until 5 to 3 on my own. The desk sergeant was the only one in the station in front. And he left the desk 3 times and came out behind the desk and went in through rooms. There, in the back, wherever he went, I don't know. I could have got up and walked out of that police station any time I wanted. And I sat there for an hour, and Fred Willoughby came in to me and he says, "Paddy, it's freezing in here, come on in here." And he took me in the back where it was a bit warmer. And he said, "We just to save time, would you have any objection to making a statement?" And I said, "No, not a problem." And him and Sergeant Watson came in and they sat down with me and I made a full detailed statement of my movements 48 hours, 72 hours before the Birmingham pub bombings. And they went away. And they came back at 6 o'clock, just after 6 o'clock, about 6:15 that morning. And they told me that everything that I told them was perfectly 100% true.
Later that morning, officers from West Midlands Serious Crime Squad arrived in Morecambe to interview the suspects.
Big shadow loomed over me and I looked up. And this guy's there and I'm looking up at him. And he's staring at me and I'm staring at him. And suddenly he bent over and he rubbed his hands like that and he went, "Soon, you little Larry's bastard. Soon, you little fuck pig. You're mine." And he spat in my face and he walked away. The cop's name's Bennett. We was Sergeant Bennett then. And him and his sidekick, a fella called John Brand, detective constable. And Bennett says to me, "Stand there against the wall," and I'm standing against the wall. And next thing I knew was he came up behind me and he grabbed my arm and twisted it up my back into my shoulder blade. And I remember screaming out, "What the fuck's the rough stuff for?" And he said to me, "Soon, you little bastard, you're going to find out in a few fucking minutes." Bennett pointed to the door and he said to me, "In there." And as I walked in the door, bang on the back of the neck and I went flying through the door. And all I remember was somebody shouting, "Don't mark his fucking face, don't mark the bastard's face, anywhere but the face." And that was at 5 to 9 that morning. And they played football and they got us in that room and they told me straight. They started battering me. And then Bennett picked me up and he put me in the chair. And he said to me, and this is the part that I can't forget, it goes round and fucking round and round in my head every day. He turned round and he says to me, quote, "We know you didn't do the bombings. We don't give a fuck who done the bombings. We've got you, that's good enough for us. It keeps the public off our gaffers' back and our gaffers off ours." And then he walked over to his pocket and he pulled a bit of paper out. And he come back to me and he pulled my head back. And he said to me, "Read that, you little bastard, read the fucking thing, look what it says. That's our orders." And their orders were that they were to get confessions and convictions and they were to use any means that they had to obtain them. And they were not to worry because they were covered all the way to the top. And he put it back in his pocket and he turned around and he said to me, "We didn't pick you. You've been selected," and he pointed at the ceiling. "You've been selected by members at the highest level of government and that's our orders. Now you can have it the easy way or the hard way." And he picked up the statement form. He said, "The easy way, sign under the right-hand corner of the caution and the bottom right-hand corner of the page." And the next one. He said, "You can help us to fill this out if you want to. It doesn't matter, we'll fill it out ourselves, it doesn't make any difference. That's the easy way." And he said, "If you don't want it the easy way, you're going to have it the hard way." And he made a circular motion with his finger and he went round the fucking walls. "Are you going?" And I went, "I ain't going to sign." And that's as far as I got. The next thing I knew was on my back. And they played football with us. They dragged us up and down the floor. They were standing on my wrists, standing on my ankles, slapping me, punching me. Bennett, he smoked them little cigar shoot things and cigarettes. And he was holding them up to my eyelids and telling me he was going to blind me. They carried on torturing us. They tortured me that morning from 9 o'clock until about 2.
Rather than conduct interviews at Morecambe Police Station, detectives decided to transfer Paddy and his friends to Birmingham, where the bombing atrocities had understandably created huge anti-Irish feeling.
They put the handcuffs on me, put a coat over my head, took me out, and they put me in the back of a car and handcuffed me to the little roof rack above it. And then they went away. And about 5-10 minutes later, Brand came back and he was the driver. He sat in the driver's seat. I'm handcuffed behind the front passenger seat. And another cop come. And this was the first time I've seen him. Detective Inspector John Moore, the second in command of the operation. And he looked in and he said to Brand, "Who have you got there?" And he says, "I've got Hill." And he said, "That's good, that's the bastard I'm looking for. Don't you go without me, I'm travelling back with you." And once we got out on the motorway, Bennett pulled the big truncheon out with a big leather thong on it, and he started whipping me across the chest. And then he started ramming the truncheon into my privates. And he was screaming at me, "I'm going to bust your balls, you bastard. You'll make no more Irish fucking hers when I'm finished with you." And of course, the next thing I knew, Moore turned round in the front seat and he's kneeling on it. And he pulled his gun out and he says, "You know what, I've had enough of you, you little bastard." And he started fiddling. I would swear he loaded the gun. But anyway, he turns round and he says to me, "Open your mouth, I'm going to give you one chance," he says. "If you don't sign a statement, I'm going to pull this trigger and I'm going to blow your fucking brains out." And he told me to open my mouth and I wouldn't open it, and he whacked me on top of the head with the barrel of the gun. And I went and he rammed the gun into my mouth and he's wrapping it round my teeth like this. And he went right and he pulled the hammer back. "You're going to sign a statement, blink your eye. 1, 2, and on the count of 3, and he pulled the trigger, and honest to God, Bernard, I can still see that hammer falling even today, 40 years later. And it seemed like an eternity, and all of a sudden you hear the click. And he pulled the gun out of my mouth, and he says, "Fucking hell, I must have a dead bullet in here. I'm lucky I'm not in a firefighter, I'd be dead." And he says, "Anyway," and he's done something, they're going, "Second time lucky." And again he whacked me on the head, and the same thing. Blink your eye, 1, 2, and then the third time he pulled the trigger, and the same thing again. And the third time he done it, Bennett pushed me over into the corner. He said he didn't want no fucking fiending blood in him. So Moore leaned over and he screwed it into my left eye, the barrel of the gun. And he turned round and he said, "Third time lucky." And the same thing again. And he pulled it again. And after the third time he said to me, "You've got more lives than a fucking cat. Wait till we get you back to Larpatch." And then they carried on punching me and slapping me all the way down the motorway till we got to Queen's Road Police Station.
The following morning, the torture and abuse of the 6 men continued. When Paddy was informed that one of his friends had admitted their guilt, he refused to believe the police. But Billy Powers had cracked and signed a confession. The Birmingham Six, as they became known, were charged with murder the following day.
But I knew we were going to get convicted. I remember on the Saturday night, about 6:30 or so, after they stopped battering me, and I heard a noise in the next cell, and I got down to the pipe, and it was Billy Powers, and the cops had been telling me that Billy Powers had made a statement and that we're all in it, and that so-and-so had made a statement and so-and-so's making one, etc. Of course, I knew the score. My co-defendant's never been in trouble, only me. And I knew it was the old bullshit as usual. And when I heard Billy's voice, and I remember saying to him through the pipe, "Billy, the cops told me that you made a statement, you signed a statement. Tell me it's not fucking true, Billy, please." And Billy just burst out crying. He says, "Me Paddy Joe, I'm sorry." He said, "I couldn't take any more." And I said to him, "Don't worry, son." I said, "We sorted out when we get for trial." But I knew then that we were doomed.
In August 1975, the Birmingham Six were sentenced to life imprisonment. All of the men denied being involved in the atrocity and began a campaign in the hope of clearing their names. It took them 17 years to secure their freedom at the Court of Appeal. Unfortunately, the story doesn't end there. Following his release from prison, Paddy Hill suffered post-traumatic distress order and continues to suffer to this day.
The Birmingham police know who did the Birmingham pub bombings. And I say that for 2 reasons. In 1974, a member of the Birmingham IRA went grass And they rounded up, I can't remember how many of them in Birmingham, but 14, 16 of them, whatever it was. And they were in custody from March or April 74. I've no doubt that that informer also gave them the names of other people, which they hadn't arrested at that time. After Morris Buck, the Assistant Chief Constable, after he made his statement to the world media on Sunday the 24th of November 1974, our names come up on the television. There was an informer then, and he went and got in touch with his handlers, and he told them, "You've got the wrong people." And he sat down and he made a detailed statement, and he gave them the names of the 2 people who made the bombs, where they made them, and the 3 people who came along later and picked them up and planted them. Jimmy Gavin and Mick Murray. Jimmy Gavin was one of the bomb makers. Mick Murray was one of the planters. And the 3 others are still alive. The people who done the Birmingham pub bombings are walking about the streets of Dublin as free men and have been ever since the Birmingham pub bombings. And that's perfectly true. They were. And they still are, those that are alive. When I came out, little did I realise that I was going to jump out of the frying pan into the fire. As I say, I never realised what the outside world was like when we come out. And I was told by psychiatrists after I came out that I've been diagnosed as suffering at level 4, which is the highest post-traumatic stress disorder, even worse than soldiers. Some of the most experienced forensic psychiatrists in the country, Professor Gordon Turnbull, etc., who treated Terry Waite and all the rest of them, and the soldiers coming back from the Gulf War and Iraq and what have you, diagnosed as us the worst that he's ever come across. And it was, 92, when I started breaking down. 1 minute you'd be dead happy, the next minute you'd be sitting there crying your eyes out like a child. And I was wishing to God I was back in jail. In a lot of ways. And sadly, Jerry Conlon isn't here. If Jerry was here, he would tell you the same thing. In a lot of ways, we were a lot happier in fucking prison than we were outside. Was they took us out of the prison, but they didn't take the prison and all the torture and brutality and everything else that we suffered out of us, and it still goes around and round and round every fucking day of the week.
But is your anger self-contained, or do you feel like you should do something, or?
Oh, at times, I feel like exploding. I feel like running amok. But I have to contain myself, because if I did, I'm going to take it out on some poor innocent bastard who doesn't deserve it. And that's what stopped me, that's what frightens me. Because I can go over the top very easy. And I would lose control. And that's the last thing I want. I don't want to make any more innocent victims, you know. But if we could get the Birmingham Serious Crime Squad in one room, believe me, I wouldn't go in and shoot them. I would go in and I would fucking butcher them, and I would do it quite happily. And I would get enjoyment out of it. Believe me, for what they done to us, there was no need to do it. But they just weren't interested in the truth. And the Birmingham police, even today, and the judiciary and the government still won't tell us the truth. They won't tell us nothing. They hide it all away just because it's too embarrassing for them, and it would do them too much damage.
Paddy Hill was arrested and jailed for 17 years simply because he was en route to a friend's funeral. We are all judged by the people we associate with. Before the days of reality television, large budgets were given to production companies to make programmes about miscarriages of justice. Granada TV's World in Action series made 2 programmes about the Birmingham pub bombings. They raised serious questions about the validity of the forensic evidence gathered by Dr. Scouse. His evidence was used to secure convictions in the case.
Dr. Scouse turns around and states that it wasn't a grease test he carried out. He said it was a special Scouse grease test, which he himself had invented and perfected, and that he'd been using it for over 20 years, and it was capable of picking up nitroglycerine at the rate of 20 nanograms. if he had have been telling the truth. Well, it would have been one of the biggest breakthroughs in forensic science in the field of explosives since the day they invented gunpowder. But nobody in his own laboratory knows anything about it. Nobody at the Home Office who are his employers know anything about it. And there's nobody in the forensic departments anywhere in the world that know anything about it. Complete fantasy. Not only that, I found out later that he carried out the wrong test he didn't know his ass from his elbow in layman's terms. In scientific terms, he didn't even know the difference between nitrate and nitrite. And as I say, he was totally discredited. And of course, Lord Lane made it quite clear before our 87 appeal that the one thing he didn't like was cases coming before the court that were media orchestrated. And we had 22 witnesses, police officers, prison officers, ex-police officers, and if I remember correctly, 2 of them from Special Branch. And they all gave evidence on our behalf. And Lord Lane knocked every one of them back.
Publicity generated by the programme brought a glut of fresh evidence to the case, and support groups began protesting the men's innocence throughout the country.
The set the world in action was in respect of Tom Clark, the cop who came forward and told him about the way we were treated and working at the Queen's Road police station. And that was because of the outcry. Amnesty International, and of course at that time, Birmingham 6 support groups and Guildford 4 support groups were springing up all over the country like sprouts, and they got worried and they ordered another police investigation by the Devon and Cornwall police. That was the second one. And of course in the second one, we ended up getting, this is the reason why the Crown prosecution withdrew in 1990 all police evidence in our case.
Paddy Hill and his co-accused would undoubtedly have been praising the media for the sterling work that they had done on their behalf. But the publicity that was generated turned out to be a double-edged sword.
We had 5 of the police officers involved. They went to court, and they were at court in Southwark in London for about half a dozen appearances over a couple of years. And suddenly, the next appearance they went into court, and the usual magistrate that was listening to the case for quite a while wasn't there. It was a different magistrate that came in from somewhere out in the sticks, I believe. And he ruled that because of all the adverse publicity surrounding the Birmingham pub bombing case, that everybody outside the public believed that we had been tortured and framed. He turned around and said, because of all that adverse publicity, the police could not get a fair trial.
Due to overwhelming media support, Hill walked free, but so too did those he claimed tortured him. We have all therefore been deprived of the truth.